We live in a world that is just completely obsessed with hustle culture and getting rich quick. It's everywhere. But today, we're taking a step back and diving into a classic fable from the village of Ranakpur that puts those modern shortcuts to the ultimate test. Meet Raghuvir. He's a milkman who wakes up at 4 a.m. every single day without fail. He bathes his buffaloes, milks them, and goes door to door. Now, he's incredibly honest and deeply respected by literally everyone in the village, but, well, he's utterly poor. So today, we're exploring a really fascinating narrative about what happens when deep-rooted integrity is pushed to its absolute limits by the temptation of quick, easy wealth. And that brings us straight to the core conflict. Think about it. What actually happens when unwavering honesty collides head-on with reckless greed, especially when they live under the exact same roof? You see, Raghuvir wasn't alone. He lived with his wife, Kamala, and honestly, they could not have been more different. It's this brilliant dramatic irony that sets the stage for a spectacular rise and a really devastating fall. As you'll see, it shows us the real-world mechanics of how one bad decision can cascade into absolute disaster. So let's look at the matchup. In one corner, we have Raghuvir's philosophy, which is basically that honesty is the ultimate wealth. His ancestors were honest, and he has this immense long-term patience. He is perfectly content living in a broken-down hut just as long as his conscience is clear. But in the completely opposite corner is his wife, Kamala. She is just exhausted by poverty. She wants status, she wants to flaunt jewelry simply to make the neighbors jealous, and she wants wealth immediately, and she doesn't care what it costs to get it. So what actually sets this whole thing off? What's the trigger? Well, the catalyst is surprisingly simple. The local village council decides they want to honor Raghuvir for his pure, unadulterated milk. So they publicly give him a flower garland to celebrate his integrity. Now for Raghuvir, this is huge. It's the ultimate validation of his life's work. But for Kamala, oh man, it's basically a slap in the face. She's sitting there looking out her window at her neighbor, Mahima, whose husband just brought home a brand new, wildly expensive car. Let's be real here. A flower garland doesn't buy a car, and it certainly doesn't buy real gold. Which brings us to the exact turning point. Kamala reaches a really dangerous conclusion. She says, if this honesty continues, I will remain poor my whole life. To her, integrity isn't a virtue anymore. It's essentially a trap keeping them totally destitute. So she decides to take matters into her own hands. And her method for escaping this poverty? Utter calculated deceit. Enter Kamala's brand new business model, which we're going to call her milk math. She volunteers to start milking the buffaloes instead of Raghuvir. Out of the 2 buckets of pure milk they produce daily, she secretly siphons off one entirely. I mean, that's 50% of their actual yield right there. She takes that and sells it under the table to a wealthy rival milkman named Bablu. Then she takes the remaining single bucket of pure milk and dilutes it heavily with water, magically creating the volume they need to sell to the village. 3, literally 3 buckets. That is the absolutely absurd number of buckets she hands over to her husband every single morning. When Raghuvir, understandably confused, asks how 2 buffaloes suddenly produced 3 buckets of milk overnight, Kamala just brushes it off. She claims it's because a woman is the lucky charm of the house. And bless his honest heart, he completely believes her. Her deceit allows her to pocket all the cash from that secret sale to Bablu, entirely behind her trusting husband's back. But what does she actually do with this secret stash of cash? Well, she wants to multiply it fast, right? So she hands it all over to her brother, Vinod, who promises her this shady double-your-money corporate scheme. It's basically the village equivalent of a terrible crypto tip. And we all know exactly how this story ends. Vinod completely vanishes. He absconds to the city with a lover, taking every single penny of Kamala's illicit milk money. In just a perfect, brutal twist of irony, the scammer becomes the scammed. And this brings up a really fascinating mental model: compound deceit. It's what happens when one lie necessitates a series of increasingly severe lies just to maintain the original falsehood, eventually leading to total structural collapse. You see, Kamala didn't just stop when she lost her money. Because she was already so entrenched in these lies, she felt she couldn't confess to Raghuvir. She had to dig a deeper hole to try and recover her losses and somehow achieve the wealth she so desperately craved. I mean, just look at how incredibly fast things snowball here. It starts innocently enough on day 1. buying fake, gold-plated jewelry just to show off to the village women. By week 2, she's actively conspiring with a rival milkman, Bob Blue, to dilute the milk. By month 3, she's lost all those illicit profits to her brother's ridiculous scam. And then, the absolute ultimate escalation hits at month 6. To buy a plot of land and build a concrete house, she actually goes and forges Raghuvir's signature for a massive bank loan. A loan she has absolutely no way of ever repaying. Now, eventually, as you might guess, the truth starts leaking out. Villagers start complaining to Raghuvir that the milk is watery. Highly suspicious, he pretends to go to the river, hides behind a wall, spies on his wife, and catches her red-handed mixing the water in. He is utterly devastated. His response is absolute. I will live by begging, but I will never let my honesty be tainted. In just an incredibly powerful moment, he takes all the watered-down milk and pours it straight out to the poor orphan children in the village for free. He absolutely refuses to sell a single drop of compromised milk. But unfortunately, the damage is already done, and the house of cards collapses rapidly. The village elders publicly call out the watery milk, instantly shattering Raghuvir's pristine, generational reputation. And then, almost immediately, the bank manager shows up for the unpaid forged loan. The final devastating blow? The bank seizes everything, the whole shebang, their home, their land, their buffaloes. Raghuvir and Kamala are left totally destitute, forced to live in a tiny wooden shack on the very edge of the village. It's really crucial to compare where everyone ends up at this exact breaking point. Bablu, the rival, got rich temporarily, sure, but his greed completely consumed him. He started adding 4 times the water to his milk, entirely ruining his long-term reputation with his wealthy city clients. Meanwhile, Raghuvir lost all his physical assets, his home, his livelihood, but he retained his core moral code. And this distinction becomes absolutely vital when a wealthy city dairy owner arrives in the village. He is furious with Bablu's watered-down milk and desperately seeking a genuinely honest milkman to invest in. So, the city investor asks the villager who he can actually trust. Some villagers, still feeling pretty betrayed, say Raghuvir used to be honest but isn't anymore. But then, Mahima steps up. Yeah, the very neighbor whose car initially sparked Kamala's intense jealousy, she steps up to set the record straight. She declares that Raghuvir was, is, and always will be the most honest milkman, and that the bad reputation was entirely due to his greedy wife. Kamala, deeply humbled and finally seeing the absolute destruction she caused, publicly admits to all her schemes, begs for forgiveness, and officially clears Raghuvir's name. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate ROI, return on investment, of true honesty. Because of his unyielding track record and his freshly cleared name, the wealthy city investor trusts Raghuvir completely. He pumps capital into his business, buying him a whole new herd of buffaloes. Raghuvir's pure milk is now supplied directly to the city at premium rates. Soon enough, he builds a real concrete house and opens his very own dairy. He literally achieves the wealth and stability Kamala always wanted, but he does it through the very integrity she had initially despised. Which leaves us with a final thought to ponder today. While deceit might offer an incredibly tempting quick fix, is its foundation built on lies ever truly secure? Raghuvir and Kamala's story powerfully reminds us that shortcuts ultimately lead to structural collapse and ruin. True, enduring success is found through unwavering integrity. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this deep dive gave you some valuable insights to take away and showed how powerful honesty can be as your ultimate long-term strategy. Catch you next time.